Hey everybody, welcome to another Warships replay. This one is once again in the Isakaze and I'm on Fault Line. Now, following on from the last match, this one is going to be very much the same sort of thing. I'm going to be trying to single out and kill the enemy battleships and carrier with my torpedoes. I can't really afford to get into gun duels. If I do use my guns at all, it's because I'm already spotted and I'm in a situation where it's life or death pretty much. Now, one thing I didn't really cover in the last video that I kind of intended to is the reload time on torpedoes, and you'll have to forgive me if this replay is really jumpy. I'm not sure why it's stuttering so much, but I can't get it to run smooth. Anyway, the reload time, of course, scales up with tier. You go from a very short reload time, about 30 seconds or so on the low tier destroyers, up to about a minute and a half, 2 minutes on the high tier destroyers. Now, what this means is that low tier destroyers are capable of just turning an entire section of the map into a channel of rage and death, pretty much, by shitting out torpedoes constantly at everything that comes near them. This might sound a little bit silly, and it can be a little bit goofy at times, but I think the reason Wargaming have actually done that is because the low tiers are meant to be training you to play the higher tiers. And, you know, they want to give new destroyer players a bit of slack because destroyers are very difficult to play well. And if you immediately slap a minute and a half, 2 minute reload on a tier 4 destroyer, people are just not going to want to play the class. So instead, the low tier destroyers get incredibly quick reload times, allowing them to quickly make up for poorly aimed spreads. And you'll see me making full use of that this match, as I did have a couple of very, very poorly aimed spreads myself.
Our team has taken the lead.
Now, you could argue that this is imbalanced or that this messes with the game or something, but again, the problem solves itself at higher tiers where the reload is much longer, and at lower tiers, really, the low tier destroyers have such little survivability that I don't think it's too much of an issue. The biggest issue at lower tiers isn't so much the fact they can fire them so quickly, but the fact that low tier battleship drivers are willing to drive directly into them with no attempt to change course or speed. Here I see a chance to make a pass on the Myogi. South Carolina's too far away, I won't get near enough to him without being spotted, and in fact I screw up here by getting a little bit too close to the Myogi. I was actually lit by the destroyer to my left, but as he pulls down the channel, I'm quickly concealed once again, and the Myogi can no longer see me. I do pop my smoke though for good measure, and also my speed boost in case I start getting shot at. Now, if you closely watch my torps as I run myself aground like a baddie, they actually run out of range just before they hit the Myogi. I did not think that through very well at all. My second spread and my third spread are still going true, but the Myogi has in fact noticed the torps and turned in towards me, and this is where he does something very, very bizarre. As I launch another couple of torps his way to see if I can sink him on the rebound, he actually begins closing the distance. Our carrier does take a pop at him there with some torpedo bombers, and you can see my next 6 going for him, and the enemy Clemson is now on top of me. Now, I've got to ignore the Myogi for now. The Clemson is a much, much bigger threat. This thing is the best brawling destroyer in the game, at least at low tiers, possibly of any tier, because it can shit out just a ridiculous volume of torpedoes on both sides of the ship at the same time, and it has pretty fucking good guns. The Clemson is just a really solid brawler. However, he misjudged his torps there, allowing me to get off some spreads myself, and combined with some gun damage, it finishes him off. Now I can deal with Myogi, who is charging at me. Having narrowly avoided being sunk before when my torps ran out of range, and then having narrowly been missed by the carrier's torpedo bombers and then missed by another 6 of my torpedoes, the Myogi thinks that his best possible course of action is to charge headfirst into the destroyer which is trying to kill him. You really couldn't make this shit up. Now, I'm certainly a lot faster than the Myogi, meaning he has no means of maintaining distance with me, but by actively charging towards me, he's really just limiting his options here. He takes 1 hit there. I do fire off another 2 spreads. It looks like I'm going to get at least 1 hit. Sure enough, there it goes. And now he's flooding. I set up for a final spread, coup de grace, but he goes down to flooding and my torps impact against his dead hull. So, that should never have happened. If he'd had any sense at all, he would have stayed the fuck away from me. He would have followed the other battleship that was with him down the eastern channel and not had that happen. Do not ever charge a destroyer in a battleship. It's just ridiculous, especially something with really fast torpedoes like this. Once you get within close range, you will not be able to evade. With this section of the map cleared, you can actually see our other destroyer in the East Channel there dealt with the other battleship. That may have worked out differently had the Myogi been there to support him. I now start lining up my next target. This Arkansas looks like he wants some torps. Now he is turning at the moment, so I don't want to launch torps while he's in the middle of a turn. That generally doesn't work out too well. I choose my moment, wait until I'm hidden behind terrain, and he's not likely to expect torpedoes to pop out right next to an island. He's also going to be distracted by the incoming torpedo bombers, remembering that the Arkansas has no noteworthy anti-aircraft armament. I double back on my course. Although I could have captured the B point there, I didn't really want to. I wanted to go kill this guy. There was a cruiser there with me anyway. I figured if we really need to cap, he can do it. Now, the Arkansas has turned in response to the torpedo bombers, but in fact he's turned directly into my spread of torps, which I didn't expect, but I will certainly not complain. This leaves me to fire off some more, anticipating his turn. If he continues on that course, he should eat some or all of these. And this is probably the best time to actually torp at somebody when they're engaged in a defensive turn, because these big battleships do not respond quickly to rudder input. The shift time on some of these rudders works up into the half-minute range, and what that means is if they're already locked in a turn, they will not be leaving it very quickly. And so if they're in a hard right or hard left turn, you've actually got a better chance of predicting their path than if they're in a completely straight line, because, you know, they've got that much slower response time to anything you do. But the Arkansas is defeated. I throw my speed boost on so I can try and get myself over to the west side of the map a little bit quicker, which is where the remaining enemy ships all appear to be bottled up. And I want to see if I can find this carrier. It's probably somewhere near the westernmost battleship. Now, we're already well and truly winning on points. Although we only hold 1 point, as do the enemy, we have got so many kills that we've just picked up the points from that. So we're at a huge position of advantage here. And as long as we're that far ahead, I see no reason to try and cap out. I'm quite happy to exploit the advantage to get more XP for myself and have a more fun match. Now, of the remaining battleships, one is a Wyoming, one is a New York. In both cases, that's quite a lot of guns, but they're not very fast and they're not enormously agile. There's also a St. Louis, which is pretty much a sitting duck, and then the enemy carrier, a Herrscher. Herrscher is now lit. He's just to my left around this island. He's still a fair distance away, but his support in the form of the Wyoming is distracted. I have no idea where the St. Louis is. He's probably somewhere around the northwest corner, or perhaps he's... no, never mind, I'm wrong. He's down in F3. Either way, he's not a problem for me. He's obviously going to try and deal with our battleship down there.
Engine boost deactivated.
My boost finally runs out. The Hosho is in gun range. He's not quite in torpedo range. And the Wyoming is still distracted. Now the Hosho is coming under fire here from the Phoenix to my left. I decide to engage as well, even though it's going to reveal me before I'm able to get my torpedoes to hit him. I'm not particularly worried about it, as long as the Wyoming stays occupied.
Our team has taken the lead.
And besides which, I'd like to try and burn this Hosho down, so he can't continue to launch aircraft against our remaining ships. He is trying to run away, but it's not going to work out too well. Good luck outrunning a destroyer. Of course, I'm once again firing AP to try and get some fires going, and there it goes. That will also pick me up the high caliber award. The Hosho does actually have some light defensive armament. I'm not sure how good its anti-aircraft is, because I've never actually seen one get attacked by aircraft, but it does have at least a handful of small defensive guns, secondary guns, which will engage destroyers if they get too close. In fact, later on you'll see he tries to charge me to kill me with the defensive guns and fails to do so. Unfortunately for me, the Wyoming has lost interest in our battleship and has turned around to come try and kill me. Not a very smart move. He's charging directly into a destroyer. He's on the other side of this island, which means by the time I pop around the corner, I'll be right next to him. He won't have the time to evade me, and it's not likely he'll be able to kill me unless he can land a full broadside of HE. So this is really just the worst situation he could willingly put himself in, and he is indeed willingly putting himself in it. If he had any kind of sense at all, he would have kept range and engaged me from there. But no. Within 3.5 kilometers, there is almost no chance for him to evade my torps. He does get a couple hits in there, but not very big ones. It appears he's firing AP. If that was HE, I would probably have been dead. 2 hits go in. Number 3 is looking pretty good. And as I close even more, I fire off what should be the finisher, and begin to work on him with my guns, just in case. Down he goes. He does finally do some real damage to me there, but it's too little too late, and now it's just the Hosho left to fend for himself. You can actually see the turrets there, firing at me. I'm not sure how many he has, I'd guess 4. There's 2 up front, and then there's some along the sides as well. However, they are not very effective against a speeding Izakaze, and he happens to drive straight past my torps, narrowly avoiding them. Doesn't matter though, because like I said, fast reload on these low tier destroyers means I've got another set ready for him as he passes, and it cracks his spine, and down he goes. And now, if you would like to direct your eyes towards the chat window in the left corner, you'll see some salty, salty battleship driver tears, and my response to them, which is that basically, get good. Don't drive in a fucking straight line around an island towards a destroyer you know is within 3 kilometers of you. It's fucking retarded. Like, learn to use your Q, E, A, and D keys to manipulate your rudder. That's basically the #1 way to not die to destroyers in this game. Battleship drivers seem to have a particular thing with destroyers, which is really odd because of the 3 methods of torpedo delivery, if we include cruisers. Destroyers are the least threatening. Cruisers actually have some real gun-based firepower to back up their torps. They also have a lot more hit points. Destroyers have no hit points, they have no armor. They don't really have big guns. They rely very, very heavily on stealth, and on their torpedo armament. Whereas cruisers, the Japanese cruisers in particular, the torpedoes are there as a nice little finisher, but you can still get most of your work done with your primary armament in the form of your guns. Torpedo bombers seem to me to be the most vexing form of torp delivery, because they're very difficult to avoid unless you know what you're doing, and they can be impossible to avoid if the carrier driver happens to be very good and you don't have much support in the form of US cruisers, for instance. But battleship drivers seem to just bitch endlessly about destroyers, which is really odd because they are literally the easiest method of torp delivery to counter. Use your rudder. Don't drive down narrow channels, Pay attention to what's going on. Don't charge at them. It's really simple, basic stuff. Even though you don't see them until you get close. Fucking who cares? Pay attention. Don't drive in straight lines. I mean, even if you don't see the destroyer, and yeah, you could say, you won't see them coming, so you'll only know when the torps are right next to you. You should have a pretty good sense of when you're at risk of being torpedoed by a destroyer, and you shouldn't be traveling in a straight line at a constant speed. It's basic stuff. I don't know why people can't handle that concept. Like, if you wait until you can actually see the torpedoes coming at you to evade, you've already fucked up. You're probably going to die. You need to be proactive about things. You can't be reactive about them. It just does not work. Unfortunately, no matter how many battleship drivers I attempt to educate on how to not be shit at the game, they will endlessly be shit at the game and complain about overpowered destroyers on the forums. Such as life. Like I said, they're basically heavy tank drivers from World of Tanks who will whine that every class that isn't a heavy tank is OP because it can kill their precious fucking Nazi shit brick. Exact same demographic of people, they're just unreal. But on the plus side, it is at least entertaining when you kill them and they start salting up the ocean even more. So, this is the Izakaze. It's good fun. It's a lot of fun. I would definitely recommend playing it.